I'm Reagan, and I'm the moderator for today. This is Social Justice Warriors Leadership Training. And our speaker today is Clara. Hi, Clara.
Hi, Reagan, how are you?
Good. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about what it means to dare.
Before we start, Clara, can you sort of introduce yourself so people who are not familiar with your work can understand your context?
Sure. So my name is Clara, and I live in New York City, and I am the founder of API Rainbow Parents Group under PFLAG New York City. PFLAG is one of the oldest and largest ally organization. It stands for Parents and Family and Friends of LGBTQ people, and there is it's a national organization, and there are chapters. And PFLAG New York City is a founding chapter that was started in early in 1970s, 60s. So I'm very excited to be here.
Can you specify what API stands for people who are not familiar with that?
Sure. API stands for Asian Pacific Islander. You can actually expand it to Asian, South Asian, East Asian, and Pacific Islander, but it is a word that is being used to indicate or group those folks who are in the Asian continent, and including the Pacific Islanders.
Okay. What social justice matters are important to you?
So I have been part of this group for almost 10 years, and so LGBTQ equality is important to me. But while I was working on that for a long time, I started gaining more insight or being more aware of a different inequality in this world. So recently, I have been studying to get more interested in Black Lives Matter, and I see the how, especially the trans Black women, are being discriminated more and being murdered in record number, and due to the racial impact. So racism, anything relating to the race, immigrant, and the LGBTQ, those are really important to me.
Okay. So to you, in your social justice matters, what does it mean to you to dare or to put yourself out there?
I thought about what it means to dare. So for me, daring or is something to do with stepping out of my comfort zone, something that I've never done before, and I'm scared and I'm afraid. I don't know how to go about. And daring basically means like, you know what? I gotta do this. I figure it out, and let's just take a step forward. And that has been, and I do have an experience, especially around the way that I started the API Rainbow Parents Group, because I saw the need, and there was, and I thought a lot about it, and I studied it, and it's been 8 years since I founded it, and now I'm very happy about the way that the organization has evolved and matured, and really looking forward to the next 5-10 years.
Clara, when you say you dared and you had to come out of your comfort zone and you talk about fear, there's like so many different things that I want to touch upon. What were your fears? And how did you go from being afraid to action? So, like, let's talk about what your fears were and how you turned that fear into action. There's two parts to that question.
Good question. So, and let me provide a bit of a context. So the way that I got into LGBTQ space is because of my son. He identified as queer, bisexual, with a trans experience. He came out in year 2010. That was about 10 years ago. And when he came out, although I thought that I was being very progressive and open-minded, because I live in New York City, I had friends who are gay and working in a company that are committed to diversity and inclusion. Still, when my son came out, there was a fear of unknown and fear of him not being able to have a happy life. But those are my personal fear. But as I got to know other LGBTQ people and other parents just like me, I saw myself feeling like I'm not alone. And there are other people who went through whatever the process they had to go through to accept themselves or accept their kids and living happy life. Now, that as I was getting to know more about that space, LGBTQ space, and learn about the challenges and issues and inequality, I saw a lot of parents just like me struggle, and I saw that there wasn't any safe space for Asian parents to get together and create a community, right? So that they know that they're not alone, because that is a very strong feeling for you to take on that next step. I got involved. I met some other amazing parents who have done this type of work before my son even came out. When I met them and we started talking about how there is a need for us to have some organization, a group, right, to provide that support, to create that safe space. So that was when I actually I was personally asked by someone. Her name is Marsha Ijumi. She lives in Los Angeles. At that time, this was several years ago. At that time, she was creating the first Asian specific the PFLAG chapter in Los Angeles area, and she asked me, "Hey Clara, I'll be PFLAG mom in West Coast. Can you be the PFLAG mom in East Coast?" And imagine, until then, I never thought about social justice. I was living in some way in a bubble. I felt that if I have a good job, have a kid, have a family, and just keep on living, then my life is going to be that, right? That I didn't really have any specific purpose, passion, or commitment to the cause. And I used to be a very shy person and wasn't feeling comfortable speaking in front of public, never had any organizing experience. So when I heard Marsha's calling, so basically she gave me a call to action, and I was scared. One, I didn't know what to do. Two, I was afraid that I might not have that capacity or competency or skill set, and I was afraid that that I will be basically putting myself in front of other people, and I was afraid that what other people will say. So those were the fears in that early stage of me kind of daring myself.
I'm curious because we're talking about fear for your son's future, happiness, will he be accepted? So all those fears are for your child, which, parents have. But the Korean American community, especially within the Christian community, there's a lot of, did you face fear of the shame factor, like fear of rejection from your family, larger extended family, fear of how you will be perceived as a good or bad parent, because why would your child, there's this lot of misunderstanding of gender identity and sexuality within the Korean American community. Those fears, how are you able to, because not all parents are accepting, not all parents would do what you did. So how, when someone asks you, can you do this, Marcia? I'm pretty sure my parents would have said, no. My child is going to hell. So I'm curious how your response, why your response was different than other parents. I would say 99% of Korean American parents or Asian parents. So if you could answer that question, would be great.
Right. So when you were asking me that question, I realized there was a journey, right? This being able to step out of my comfort zone didn't happen like this. So when my son came out, until the time that I was able to finally accept and make peace and made a decision to support my son for his transition and whatnot, it took me for 1 year. And that 1 year, I wasn't just sitting in my home or kind of, putting the blanket cover, and it wasn't like that. I had to kind of work through it. I started going to the support meeting. I started talking to people. And the fact that, and looking back, I know there are a couple of things that kind of really helped me maybe expedite that process compared to other parents. One, I'm not very religious. Although I was brought up as a Catholic, I wasn't really religious. That's one thing. And I just didn't like how this churches, as like organized churches, right? The mega churches, I just didn't like the way that things are going. And second thing is, at that time, my ex-husband and I and my child, we were living in New York City, and we didn't have any relatives, close friends living next to us. So that during 1 year, we didn't really have to deal with any other relatives, right? It gave us a space. And thirdly, what I realized is that my family, small group of family, wasn't really interacting with a Korean American or other Asian community, other than going to the market and picking up some food. So I think those are three factors. And then lastly, I went to middle school and high school and college here. I started working in an environment where diversity and inclusion is, encouraged, right? I got diversity training at workplace. The neighbors and friends that we made, they are very open-minded, and there are a couple of gay people, and we treated each other without any problem. So those were the factors. And then not to mention that New York City has a tons of resources, right? So looking back, I realized how privileged I was. And I had a good job, and our financial kind of state was pretty stable. And we didn't really have any other challenges. So my son coming out came to us as like one of the biggest challenge that we had to face. And that during 1 year and leveraging all these resources, and I finally able to get my head around. So after 1 year, that's when we started really coming out to our neighbors, our family, extended family in West Coast, extended family in Korea. So it was after doing all that, like practicing the staring, practicing stepping out of my comfort zone, shifting my thought process, right? So I did have a practice. So when Marshall calls for an action, hey, Clara, now, you are on your way to support your son. You think that you can support other people. And I was, instead of being right on the zero level, I think I was at least a certain level to be able to say, right, I have done this. It was tough in the beginning, but I think I can like step out just a little more. So now looking back, this is very interesting. Looking back, I think by doing so, I actually just brought myself up a little bit more. And then the next time the similar challenge came, it was easier for me to dare because I had a track record. I learned some tricks. I gained some tools. And what's really important is that through that whole process, I gained so many mentors, friends, and supporters, people who feel the same way, people who wanted me to success or succeed, and they were available, and they created such a support system that I never experienced when I was growing up. In my high school year, college year, even before I got married, I lived in an environment where I felt like I had to get things done on my own, that I didn't have anyone to look up to or reach out or to even complain or share my fears. I didn't have that. But looking back now, I realized in order for you to be there or in order for you to dare, one, you kind of have to push yourself. But then two, you gotta trust that there will be people who will support you. And building the support system is really important.
Reagan, you're muted, so.
So Reagan, did it make sense to you too?
Reagan, you should unmute yourself, please. While Reagan is unmuting herself, let me ask the next question. Why do you think there needs to be creativity when you are daring?
Well, one thing is daring usually means that you're doing something either one that you have never done, or you realize that there's nothing like what you're trying to do out there. So you don't have a model. And for me, because I'm not really an artistic person, creativity basically means that trying out something new, whether because you didn't have that experience or whether you haven't really seen other people doing it. And being open-minded about different things. So one thing that I realize is that you don't really have to have all the answers to everything that you think can go wrong. Or even if you don't know where to start, being creative means that you basically figure that out. But you don't have to do that on your own. You can ask other people, maybe some other organization, might not be the same, but ask them, hey, I've seen you doing this thing. What did you have to go through? What were the first steps that did you do? What were the challenges? What are the people that I can connect with that can help us or help me starting this something new? And for me at that time, the very first thing that I've done after I spoke to Marsha was to reach out to people in New York City itself. I asked them, hey, there's a need. We don't have any group that's specifically for the Asian parents. And there's a need, one, because of traditional or typical support model for that's being done in PFLAG space doesn't usually work for Asian parents. There are a lot of different challenges that are very unique. And the ED and board president at that time told me that, yeah, in the past they were trying to create a support group like that, but they never succeeded. One, they didn't have any leaders who's like me, who has a bilingual skill set, who understands that immigration experience, and who has actually gone through that process. And they were happy to support me if I want to take that on. And that really got me to think about my role. That when I look at other people, I realized that I don't see anyone like me, and that was hard. That was a reason why I had a hard time finding other parents like me. I remember meeting Marcia for the first time. She actually wrote a book about her journey supporting her son, who was identified as a transgender, and that was the first time I actually saw somebody like me who has gone through the process, who has gone through the journey. And you can imagine I was crying my heart out. And that is that I realize is so important for many parents out there. So I had a motivation because I had so much benefit of seeing other parents, and I wanted to create something like that for other parents myself too.
Curious, Reagan, have you wanted to do something but you were scared? And when you were scared, do you understand what Clara, in terms of the process she needed to go through?
Mm-hmm.
Can you also, Reagan, give us an example in your life what a high schooler has to go through to understand what it means to dare?
Let's see, an example what it means to dare for me would be this kind of relates to school. I've had to use school in student senate, which is student government. So we help plan activities and stuff. And so we have to learn public speaking, which is also a class that I've had to take. And I don't really like to public speak, so I've had to grow in my public speaking abilities. And I was always scared that what if I don't say the right thing or have the right timing for something? And so learning how to kind of put those fears not behind me, but kind of just put them in the back of my mind and go for it and kind of practice it, because I wasn't going to get any better just standing there not practicing my public speaking skills. And so I'm still nervous to speak in front of people, but I've definitely gained a lot more confidence seeing that my other peers and friends and classmates also have the same fears as me. So knowing that the community kind of has similar views to things that I do and talking it out and taking that class, I think it really helped me see what I could do to become better at that.
And I think it's important. I think Clara was talking about this because your public speaking is also an issue. I think it's an issue for a lot of people. But the question is, there needs to be the why of it. Why do I want to improve my ability to speak? Yeah. Right, Clara? And why is it so important that I voice my opinion? There has to be an objective to it. If there's no purpose or meaning behind public speech, why should I learn how to speak to people? I mean, why is communication important? Well, it's like, how do I convey anything, right? So the why of what we do is always so important, and it motivates us.
Yeah.
And the why is for you is your child, but more importantly, it's greater than your child. It's inclusion of a group that has been marginalized, right? And so it's sort of trying to give purpose to what we are doing that gives us the impetus to want to fight, to want to be better, to be great, to work harder. Does that make sense, I guess?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to take it a little further. So for me, I started because of my son. And then later, when I started thinking about doing this, I talked to my son and the family, and I was told that, hey, if you're a mom, I'm glad that you wanted to do this. So this is what my son told me. I'm glad that you want to do this, but if you are going to do this, please do it for yourself. I was dumbstruck. What do you mean? I'm doing this because for you. So I had to have an hour of a therapy session with a therapist, and so I was actually upset. I didn't know what he meant by that. So I was talking to my therapist. Doing this for myself means I'm being selfish. And how come my child doesn't understand this? Like, and being selfish in Asian culture means that it's a bad thing, right? I don't want to be a selfish person. I want to do this for somebody else. And then at the end of the my 1 hour ranting, the therapist, I think he was running out of a 1 hour session time, said, Mrs. Yoon, I'm glad that you are thinking about this, and you know this is going to be really amazing. But and I know you're still upset, but would you consider giving yourself permission to be, this is not a selfish act, but this is a selfless act that you are trying on. And would you give yourself permission to do this? Even though I might be struggling with this and not understanding the whole idea about being selfish and selfless and still struggling, but he was asking me, would I give myself a permission to do something that I believe in, even though it may conflict with or clash with some of the things that I have learned in my past. And that just opened up my eyes. Wow. So I can give myself permission. I don't have to ask other people to give me permission to do something that I really wanted to do.
I'm so glad you touched upon this, because this is not only an Asian issue, but it's an Asian women or just women in general issue. That what we do, we must do for others. We are sacrificing for others. Mm-hmm. But if I do anything for myself, it's selfish. But we're going to talk about this notion of definition of success, meaning my needs, the needs of the community actually are the same or similar. Once I lift up the community, it is lifting myself up as well. And I think we need to redefine what it means, what selfish means, what common good means, and sort of say, actually, they should be integrated. So absolutely. Because the idea is we are daring for others. No, we're daring for our community. That includes me. Because, and this is, we are so interconnected. At any point in which someone is oppressed, someone is marginalized, I too am, because it's causing my dehumanization. And I think once we realize that, we cannot hurt other people. We cannot hurt animals. We cannot hurt the environment because it's all connected. And we can't separate one from the other. And I think, Clara, you point out something so powerful that I think if anyone walks away from this discussion, it's that very issue. That we are needing to dare for everyone.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of connect this with the purpose that Sam, you mentioned earlier. Yes, having purpose really gives you that some kind of power. I don't know what that was, but I really wanted to do this. I know the impact of this, and I know that I have to be the one who has to do this. But the purpose ultimately has to be, it can be just the way that we are connecting all these things. Myself can be that purpose because I am part of that whole big picture. And I think it also goes into this whole self-care, self-love, and being able to really value and cherish myself, and at the same time that it genuinely and truly it will come out for other people. It will manifest itself. And that was one of the things that I had learned through this last several years, starting with my thinking that I'm doing this for my son, and then thinking that, okay, I'm doing this for other parents. And then recently I'm realizing, wow, so I have been, by doing all that, whatever the reason was, I was the one who got benefit, so much out of it. And I when I look back, like I am just so happy and excited about what has really happened. And speaking of happiness, right? So my definition of happiness has also evolved. Like, to me, this is happiness, right? This is like the height of being happy. Although I know and COVID and with all these things going on, but I think being able to, like, building up this community and having some kind of purpose in my life that I truly believe that is gonna not only help my son, but other people, other community members, and including myself. I think that's really exciting thing.
Any final thoughts? Reagan, Clara? Reagan, did you have?
Yeah, I had a statement that one of my teachers always told us was, to help others, you have to help yourself first. So in order to help others, you have to be happy with who you are and the purpose that you're trying, or as you go through and you're helping others, you may realize that it's actually benefiting you and others with that, so it can kind of coincide with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. All the themes that we're touching upon, we'll be exploring more in depth. What I want to say here is this. The reason why people in social justice work need to dare is because the status quo is not working for these people who are marginalized, who are being oppressed. To dare is to go transgress against what is, because what is not working for large segments of our population. The reason why we have to be creative is what has been practiced in the past is not working. So creativity forces us to think outside the box. Like, PFLAG has worked for certain communities, but it did not work for API, Asian Pacific Islander families. So we have to be creative and include that voice. Otherwise, there will be segments of the population whose voice we are not hearing, whose needs we could not take care of. So therefore, daring has to coincide with creativity. social justice work cannot be done without daring and creativity because something is not working. Anything that needs to be transformed, you must push against what is. And so the conversation, what Claire has been sort of chronicling in terms of her journey is, it's not easy. It's a long process. And it's every day that we need to be courageous. It's not like you're courageous that one moment and you forget about it. Every morning, Clara, Reagan, you, all of us, when we wake up, I wake up with a lot of fears and anxieties. But every day I have to choose to dare creatively in order to do the work that we are engaging in. We have to engage in. Why? Because it's not just benefiting others, it's actually benefiting me. I want to close. That's my sort of, any final comments before we close?
So I wanted to also mention one thing. So sometimes, the way that we are saying like daring, creativity, no fear. But I think we have to admit ourselves, right? Because I also read that article, and I love that the author. We also need to be okay with us not having all the answers in order for us to be daring. I think the vulnerability is something that's really, really key. If you are basically trying to get something done because I'm daring myself and I'm just pushing for it, it's probably not going to work. In order for you to dare and just take the lead, what you need is like you just need to have a full awareness about what is not there, what is missing, and instead of saying, well, I want to do this, but I don't have this, can we say, I want to do this and I don't have this, but then how do I fill that gap? Who are the people that I need to reach out to? Who are the people that I can share my passion and this purpose? And I think those are the things that people should be aware, and then it should kind of come with this act of daring. And Sam, I hope that your remaining sessions will cover those tools and skills that folks will need in order for them to kind of move forward.
Reagan, final thoughts?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, what Clara has touched upon is the reason why it's so scary to dare is the unknown. We don't know because it hasn't been done before. The path is not laid out. The journey is not laid out. The decisions has not been made out. So therefore, every step you take is scary because we don't know how it's going to unfold. And yes, what Brene Brown was talking about, we will fail. We will make a lot of mistakes. But that's the whole part of this journey. It's scary as hell, but at moments it's rewarding. And so that's what we need to remember. It's not the certainty, but the uncertainty of what we do, the kind of work that we should do. Thank you, Reagan. Thank you, Clara.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So
Thank you.
we will end.